Do audiobooks count as reading? The answer is no, but they serve their own purpose and perhaps they're more important because I really need to get this through is that there was a time when not everyone could read it right. There was a time when the only way that you could hear a story or somewhat explore your imagination was through the bards and the poets and the traveling artists who would tell the Odyssey, who would tell the Iliad, who would tell the Aeneid and those such stories. And there's a very fundamental aspect of our brain that is captured when we hear something, that is enthralled when we're listening to something, that there's something more that a spoken text can add to the content of it. And really what I'm trying to say is that we get so caught up in these ideas of things and these conceptions of things that we completely reduce the capacity to use a tool. Like there's so many people that are like, oh, you don't retain as much while you're listening to something. Perhaps that's true for nonfiction. Perhaps that's true for certain subjects. But there is also something to be said about our capacity to understand, our capacity to gain meaning through someone's voice, to gain meaning through inflection, to understand in different ways, to tie together different facets of our brain. And really what I'm urging you to do is just start listening to things. It doesn't have to be audiobooks. It doesn't have to be anything that's that extraordinary, but just understand that there's this whole other side to the human brain that we're not using because we've heard that we can't retain information as well. Who cares if you can't retain information as well if you get a deeper meaning, if you get a deeper sense of things, if you have a deeper understanding but you don't quite know the details? We have such an obsession with the acquisition of knowledge, but we have so little things to apply it to. There's no heart to what we're doing. There's no soul to what we're doing. And I feel like this is what we're missing in that passed down tradition. Like, I want you to understand why James Joyce was able to craft Ulysses the way he was able to craft it. It's because his culture was such the passed down oral history. In Ireland, when it was conquered, that you weren't able to speak Irish, you weren't able to talk about the folk tales, you weren't able to talk about the legends, you weren't able to write them down. So in fact, they had to be sung, they had to be passed down, they had to be in some way preserved. And it's through this oral preservation that crafted the mind of James Joyce, that crafted the architecture for his work. And that's why you have to sing parts of it. That's why parts of it are incomprehensible to the average mind, simply because you can't interpret what he's trying to say by simply reading it. You have to sing it out loud to get the heart of it. And really what I'm trying to urge you to do is just start looking at the world in a different way. Start understanding the way we learn is very different, and we can start using different facets of our mind to benefit ourselves in the course of our studies. And I'm somebody that's very much against lectures because I don't really find lectures that interesting. But it's a very different thing when you have a great lecturer, when you have a great teacher, and when you have a really, really good audiobook, one that's really well done, one that's read by somebody with a very pleasing voice. It accesses a whole nother part of our brain. It allows you to do something while you're listening to the book. It allows you to go about your day. And perhaps if you don't quite have the attention span just to sit down and read a 500-page book, it might be a whole lot easier for you to just listen to it. And I want to break down the stigma of this idea that you learn better one way or this way or this way or this way. Like, everyone's different. We all have different facets of ourselves and different things that stimulate our brain. So understand that if you're not using audiobooks, you're just neglecting a tool that you could be using. Maybe you don't use them all the time, but there's certainly an avenue to go explore. And I tell you to go try it, because when I first started getting into reading, the first place I started was audiobooks. I had a whole lot of time commuting to school in the car each day, about 4 hours, and the amount of books I was able to consume during that time period really set me down the path of learning, really set me down the path of exploration, and gave me a great foundation to begin the rest of my studies. So I want you to understand this idea. I want you to apply this idea, and just think, it's not that audiobooks aren't reading. It's something different. It's its own category. It has its own aspect of things. It's like, listening to the radio or watching a movie, or in any way exploring a different medium. There's different styles of art. There's different styles of expression. And when we can pull from more than one aspect of creativity, then we can pull different aspects of our brain. And nothing is as simple as this or this. It's always yes and. It's always the carrying over of different ideas into different aspects of our lives through a single common thread that allows us to access creativity, that allows us to access the answer of things. The world's very complex. There's no one system that can ever define anything. And it's the same way with our studies. We need multiple things in order to reiterate the important lessons in our brain. And yeah, hopefully this was an interesting video. Hopefully this was something you want to hear more of. If not, I hope I at least inspired you to maybe pick up an audiobook or begin to listen to something that is somewhat educational and somewhat inspirational and somewhat inspiring. And maybe I set you down a good path. Maybe I didn't. Maybe I ruined your life. I don't know. With that said, thank you guys so much. Peace out. I'll catch you in the next one.